Anya was just 14 years old, a quiet and bright girl who lived in a small town with her family. She was very close to her father, Ramesh. He wasn't rich or famous. He worked as an electrician, fixing wires and lights in people's homes. But to Anya, he was the strongest, kindest, and most important person in the world. He would bring home little surprises for her, like a samosa from her favorite shop or a handmade toy. Every evening after work, he would sit beside her and help with her schoolwork. And on weekends, they would go on walks, laughing and talking, like best friends. Everyone in the neighborhood knew how much Ramesh loved his daughter. He would proudly show her drawings to his friends and tell people that Anya would become something big one day. Anya, in return, adored her father. She would wait near the window every day, watching the road until she saw him coming home on his bicycle. The moment he walked in, she would jump into his arms. Her world was safe, simple, and full of love, as long as her father was there. One day, the weather changed. It had been raining since morning. The sky was full of gray clouds, and the streets were wet and slippery. Anya was at home studying for a school test. Her mother was in the kitchen making tea. Everything felt normal. But sometimes life doesn't give any warning before it changes everything. Around 6 in the evening, there was a knock on the door. A neighbor stood outside, soaked from the rain. His face looked strange, worried, serious. Anya's mother opened the door and listened. Then she suddenly dropped the tea tray she was holding. Cups shattered on the floor. She looked at Anya, her face pale as a sheet. "Your father," she whispered, but couldn't finish the sentence. She grabbed her shawl and rushed out into the rain. Anya stood frozen, her heart beating fast. An hour passed, then 2. Nobody told Anya what had happened. She kept asking, but everyone just told her to sit quietly. Finally, her uncle came home, his face tired and wet. He sat down beside Anya, took her hand gently and said, "Baba had a heart attack at work. He didn't make it." For a moment, Anya didn't understand what those words meant. Didn't make it? Where didn't he make it? Was he in the hospital? Was he coming back? "No," her uncle said softly. "He's gone, Beta. He's not coming back." The world suddenly became quiet for Anya. Everything felt like a dream, or maybe a nightmare. Her ears rang. Her hands felt cold. Her father, her Baba, who was supposed to come home like always, wasn't going to walk through the door ever again. She waited that night anyway. She sat by the window, staring at the street, hoping that somehow he would appear on his bicycle, smiling like always. But he didn't. The next day, her home was filled with people. Relatives arrived, some crying loudly, others whispering to each other. Neighbors brought food. Some women hugged Anya tightly. But she didn't cry. Not a single tear came out of her eyes. She sat quietly in a corner, holding a small photo of her father in her hands. In the picture, he was smiling, his eyes full of joy. She touched the photo, running her fingers over his face, trying to feel him. But it was just paper, cold and lifeless. Later that evening, the body was brought home from the hospital. Anya wasn't allowed to see it at first. They said she was too young, that it would scare her, but she didn't care. She pushed past the adults and walked slowly toward the wooden coffin placed in the living room. Her father lay inside, dressed in white, his eyes closed, his hands folded. He looked like he was just sleeping, like he would wake up at any moment and smile at her. She climbed onto the stool beside the coffin and leaned in. Her hands touched his. They were cold. Her heart hurt so badly it felt like it might stop. She wanted to scream, to cry, to beg him to open his eyes. But she didn't. Instead, she did what she always did when she was sad. She hugged her father. She leaned into the coffin, wrapped her arms gently around his chest, and placed her head against him. Her tears finally came, hot and heavy. "Baba," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please come back. I can't do this without you. I'm scared. I miss you. Don't leave me." People around her were crying. Some tried to pull her away, but her mother stopped them. Let her stay, she said. Let her say goodbye. Anya stayed like that for a long time. She didn't care who was watching, she didn't care what people thought. She only knew one thing: she wanted to feel her father's warmth one last time, even if he couldn't feel hers. As she hugged him, a strange feeling filled her chest. It was like something inside her heart was reaching out, stretching through the pain. She closed her eyes tightly and tried to remember every moment they had spent together. The bedtime stories, the bicycle rides, the times he carried her on, his shoulders, the jokes they shared, the promises he made. She whispered again, "If you can hear me, Baba, please. Just one sign, anything. Let me know you're still here." And then, something happened. Anya felt a tiny twitch under her hand. She opened her eyes, confused. Maybe it was her imagination. Maybe her hand had moved by accident. But then it happened again. A soft, barely there movement. A finger? No, it couldn't be. He was gone. Wasn't he? People around her didn't notice. They were still talking, still weeping, still lighting candles and saying prayers. But Anya knew what she felt. She pulled back slightly and looked at her father's face. His chest didn't move. His eyes were still closed, but her heart told her something was different. She bent closer and whispered one last time, "Please, Baba. Please come back to me." And just for a moment it felt like he breathed. Very lightly. Very slowly. Anya didn't shout or scream. She just hugged him tighter, holding on to that feeling. Somewhere deep inside she believed that love could still reach him. That maybe, just maybe, her voice could bring him back. In that moment, with rain still falling outside and candles flickering around the room, the air felt different. Like something had changed. Like a door had opened. Even if just a crack, and though nobody else knew it yet, Anya did. Something amazing was about to happen. As Anya hugged her father's lifeless body, she couldn't explain the strange sensation that was stirring inside her. It wasn't a simple wishful thought or a figment of her imagination. It was real, like the pull of gravity, undeniable. Her heart beat rapidly, and she stayed as close to him as she could, hoping for a sign, anything to prove that he wasn't completely gone. She wasn't sure how much time passed, but it felt like an eternity before her uncle, her mother's brother, approached her gently. "Anya, darling," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You need to let go now. It's time to say goodbye." Anya's grip on her father tightened. She didn't want to let go, not yet. She wasn't ready to accept the truth. Her father couldn't be gone. It didn't make sense. She had seen him just days ago, laughing, full of life. How could all of that disappear in an instant? But her uncle's soft words were persistent, and reluctantly, Anya pulled herself away. She looked at her father one last time, the tears falling from her eyes. Her hands trembled as she touched his cold face, the reality of what was happening settling deeper in her heart. "I love you, Baba. I'll never forget you." As she stepped away, the room was silent. Relatives and neighbors continued to weep, softly, but Anya barely noticed. Her mind was elsewhere, in a place where she was still holding on to the hope that this couldn't be the end. Even as they prepared the body for the funeral procession, she couldn't shake the feeling that her father wasn't completely gone, that somehow in some way he was still with her. The next few hours were a blur of prayers, incense, and solemn faces. People came and went, offering their condolences, speaking in low voices. Anya felt like she was in a dream. Everything around, her moving too fast while she stood still, caught in her own thoughts. The only thing that felt real to her was the quiet warmth of the room and the small flickers of hope that danced in her chest. As night fell, and the last of the relatives left, Anya and her mother were left alone in their small house. Her mother sat on the floor, her eyes empty as she stared at the ground. Anya wanted to comfort her, but she didn't know how. She was still trying to understand her own feelings. How could a person, a presence so strong, be gone forever? It felt impossible. That night, Anya couldn't sleep. The house felt so empty without her father's voice, without the sound of his footsteps. The quiet was deafening. She kept thinking about the moment she had held him in the coffin, how she had felt his fingers twitch, how her heart had cried out in that moment, begging him to return. Was it real? Had she imagined it? Or was it something more? The next day, everything was different. The family gathered again, this time to prepare for the funeral. People began coming into the house, helping to wash and dress the body. Anya sat in the corner, watching silently. She didn't speak to anyone. She didn't have the energy to. She just wanted to be near her father, to feel close to him in any way she could. It was then, just as the body was being prepared to leave the house, that something strange happened. Anya had been sitting quietly, staring at her father when she felt it again. The same sensation she had felt when she was hugging him. The room was filled with people, all preparing for the procession. But in that moment, it felt like everything else faded away. The air in the room shifted. Anya stood up quickly, her heart racing in her chest. She walked toward the coffin, her feet moving almost without thinking. When she reached her father's side, she placed her hands on the edge of the coffin, staring down at him. The room was so still that it almost felt like time had stopped. Everyone else was moving, but Anya was frozen in place. She had to know. She couldn't leave without knowing. Her fingers gently touched her father's hand. His skin was still cold, his fingers stiff. But then, just as she was about to pull her hand away, a tiny movement, almost too small to notice, caused her breath to catch in her throat. It wasn't a full movement, not like a twitch or a jerk, but it was there. A tiny shift, like her father had just made the faintest attempt to move. Anya didn't know what to think. Could it be possible? Could it really be him? She pressed her fingers against his hand once more, her pulse racing. And then it happened again, a slightly more noticeable movement. Her heart skipped a beat. This time she pulled back, her eyes wide in disbelief. The air felt thick with anticipation. She glanced around the room, but no one else seemed to have noticed. They were still busy preparing, some talking, others gathering flowers and candles. No one was paying attention to her, to the strange sensation she felt. Anya turned back to her father's body, staring at it. She didn't know if it was the shock, the grief, or something else entirely, but she couldn't ignore what was happening. Her father had been dead for hours. The doctors had confirmed it. But here she was, feeling him respond to her touch. What was going on? Was this really happening? Or was her mind playing tricks on her? She took a deep breath and placed her hands on the coffin again, this time holding on tighter. She spoke softly, her voice barely a whisper. "Baba, please, if you're still here, if you can hear me, please come back. Please let me know you're okay." For a moment, nothing happened. The room was still quiet. And then, just when she was about to pull her hands away, there was a sudden, faint but unmistakable shift. The fingers of her father's hand twitched, just enough to send a shock through her body. It was real. This wasn't a trick of the mind. Anya gasped, stepping back, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe it. Was this a miracle? Was it something else? She didn't know. All she knew was that her father, her Baba, wasn't as gone as everyone thought. There was something more happening here, something beyond what she could understand. Without wasting a second, Anya rushed to find her uncle. She grabbed him by the arm, pulling him toward the coffin. "Uncle," she said, her voice shaking. "Please. Look." He moved. Baba moved. Her uncle looked at her with a confused expression, but when he followed her gaze, his face changed. He stepped closer to the coffin, peering down at Ramesh's body. For a long moment he just stared. The room was still again, everyone holding their breath. Then, to Anya's shock, her uncle spoke in a calm, steady voice. "I think we need to take him to the hospital." It was clear now this was not the normal grieving process. Something incredible was happening. Something that no one could explain. The room burst into activity. The doctors were contacted and the family rushed to get Ramesh to the hospital. Anya felt like she was in a dream, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. What if this was real? What if her father had truly been brought back to life? As they hurried out of the house, Anya stayed close to the coffin, her hand resting on it, not wanting to let go of the small, fragile hope that was growing inside her. The ride to the hospital felt like a blur. Anya sat quietly beside the coffin, her fingers lightly resting on the cold wood. Her mind was racing. Was it possible? Could her father really have come back? She had felt him move. She had seen it, with her own eyes, but how could that be? The doctors had said he was gone. How could he possibly be alive? Her thoughts swirled in a whirlwind of confusion, disbelief, and hope. The house had been full of people, all preparing for the funeral. But now, as the family sped toward the hospital, everything seemed different. The world outside the car seemed distant, as if it no longer mattered. All that mattered was what was happening right now, in the back seat of the car. Anya couldn't take her eyes off the coffin. Was her father really inside it? Or was something else going on? Something strange. Something that couldn't be explained by science. Something that felt almost magical. When they arrived at the hospital, a wave of nervous energy filled the air. Doctors and nurses rushed to help, unsure of what they were about to face. Some of them looked skeptical, others were confused, but no one could deny that something was unusual about the situation. Anya stood by her father's side as the medical team quickly began to examine him. She stayed silent, watching intently, as if afraid that speaking or moving would somehow ruin the fragile moment they were in. A doctor, a tall man with thick glasses, looked over Ramesh's body, checking his pulse, his breathing, and his temperature. For a long time, he didn't say anything. He seemed deep in thought, confused by what he was seeing. Anya's heart was in her throat. She could barely breathe as she waited for the doctor to speak. Finally, the doctor looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. "This is impossible," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "How is this even possible?" "What is it, doctor?" Anya's mother asked, her voice shaky. "Is he alive?" The doctor shook his head, clearly trying to understand what was happening. "It's hard to explain," he said slowly, "but there is a faint pulse, and his heart rate is increasing, very slowly, but it's there. His breathing, it's shallow, but it's there." Anya couldn't believe it. Her heart raced. Could this be the sign she had been hoping for? Could her father really be alive? The doctor turned to the nurse and whispered something to her, before stepping back and continuing to monitor Ramesh's condition. The room felt thick with tension. The medical team worked quickly, adjusting equipment and checking his vitals. But Anya could barely keep her eyes off her father. She had no words, only emotions. She felt an overwhelming mixture of hope and fear. Was it possible that he had been revived by some miracle? Or was this some kind of strange coincidence? And if he was coming back, what did that mean? How would everything change? Time passed slowly as the doctors and nurses continued their work. Anya stayed at her father's side, never once leaving him. Her mother, too, stayed close, holding on to hope. The family watched in silence, not daring to say anything, not daring to even breathe too loudly. Everyone was waiting for something, anything to happen. After what felt like hours, the doctor finally spoke again. "We need to get him into a more stable environment," he said. "He's still not fully responsive, but there are signs that his body is starting to react to the treatments. We'll need to run some tests." The hospital staff quickly moved Ramesh to an intensive care unit, and Anya followed close behind. She was like a shadow, never leaving her father's side. The medical team continued to work, trying to stabilize his condition. But the question remained, how had this happened? Was it truly a miracle, or was there some scientific explanation they hadn't figured out yet? The doctors ran test after test, trying to understand what was going on inside Ramesh's body. They hooked him up to machines, monitored his heart, his blood pressure, and his oxygen levels. For hours, the doctors tried to make sense of it, but with every test, something strange happened. Ramesh's condition improved. His pulse grew stronger. His breathing became steadier. And before long he was opening his eyes. Anya gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her father's eyes fluttered open slowly. At first they looked confused, lost. But then they focused on her. His face was pale, his lips dry. But there was no mistaking it. He was alive. "Baba," Anya whispered, her voice shaky. She couldn't believe it. It felt like a dream. "Baba, is it really you?" Ramesh blinked a few times, his eyes slowly focusing on his daughter. Then, he whispered, his voice hoarse, "Anya, is that you?" Tears filled Anya's eyes as she rushed to his side. "Yes, Baba, it's me. You're back. You're really back." Ramesh tried to speak again, but his words were weak. His body was still fragile, and he was having trouble breathing, but the fact that he had woken up at all was enough to send waves of joy through Anya's heart. The doctors and nurses gathered around, still stunned by what was happening. They had been prepared for anything, but this was beyond anything they could explain. One of the doctors turned to Anya's mother, who was standing beside her daughter, and said softly, "I don't know how to explain this. He should have been dead. But somehow he's alive. We'll have to continue monitoring him, of course, but this is nothing short of extraordinary." Anya's mother, still in shock, nodded silently. She couldn't speak, couldn't find the words to express what she was feeling. She had just lost her husband, but now, miraculously, he was back. She looked at Anya, who was holding her father's hand, her face filled with a mixture of disbelief and joy. Her heart swelled with emotion. For the next few days, Ramesh remained in the hospital under constant care. His recovery was slow, but it was happening. With every passing hour, his strength returned, little by little. Anya and her mother stayed by his side, refusing to leave him, unwilling to let go of the miracle they had been given. The doctors were still baffled. They couldn't explain how Ramesh had survived or why his body had reacted the way it had. There were theories, of course. Suspension of life due to extreme conditions, a rare medical phenomenon that had caused him to appear dead when he wasn't. But nothing could fully explain what had happened. The only thing that was certain was that Ramesh had been given a second chance at life, and everyone around him knew that this was no ordinary recovery. Anya never stopped watching her father. Every time he smiled at her, every time he spoke, every time he reached out to hold her hand, it felt like a gift. Anya knew that they had been given something incredible, something that would change their lives forever. As the days passed, Ramesh continued to improve. He was no longer the pale, lifeless man they had seen lying in the coffin. He was getting stronger every day. The doctors couldn't explain the miracle, but Anya didn't need an explanation. All she knew was that her father had come back, and that was all that mattered. For Anya, this moment would stay with her forever. The feeling of holding her father's hand, the relief in his eyes when he saw her, and the knowledge that no matter what life threw at them, their bond was unbreakable. She had done what no one thought was possible. She had brought him back with nothing more than her love, and in that moment, she knew that whatever happened next, she would never take a single moment with her father for granted again. The miracle had already happened, and nothing would ever be the same. Days passed, and with each one, Ramesh's recovery seemed almost like a miracle. Anya, her mother, and the doctors were in awe of what had happened. Ramesh, who had been declared dead, now sat up in his hospital bed, asking about his family, his friends, and the life he thought he had lost forever. His once weak voice had become stronger, and his face, though still pale, was slowly regaining its color. He was no longer the frail, lifeless man he had been just days ago. Anya couldn't believe the transformation. Each day when she walked into the hospital room, she was met with a different version of her father, a little stronger, a little more aware, and a little more like the man she had always known. But there was something else that lingered in the air, something unspoken. Ramesh was back, yes, but his return raised questions that no one had answers for. The doctors were still baffled. They had run countless tests, trying to figure out how Ramesh had been revived, but nothing explained it. There were no signs of any medical intervention that could account for his sudden recovery. It wasn't like a regular case of medical miraculously surviving death. Ramesh had been clinically dead, and yet here he was, breathing, talking, and healing. Anya had always been close to her father, but now their bond felt even stronger. It was as if something unexplainable had happened between them, something beyond the physical world. She would sit by his bedside for hours, talking to him about everything and nothing at all. She told him about her day, about her school, about the small things that made her smile, and with each passing day, Ramesh seemed to grow more and more like himself, laughing at her jokes, asking about her friends, and even offering his wisdom like he used to. But despite the joy that came with his recovery, Anya couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. There were moments when Ramesh would look at her with a strange expression, as if he was seeing her for the first time. He seemed disoriented at times, as though his mind was catching up to his body, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Anya had noticed these moments, but she didn't want to say anything. She was too happy to have him back, too relieved to see him alive. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. Anya was sitting by her father's side, watching as he rested. She noticed that he had fallen asleep, his chest rising and falling gently with each breath. The room was quiet, and the soft hum of the machines in the background was the only sound. She had been lost in thought, her mind still swirling with questions about what had happened, when she suddenly heard a soft voice. Anya. She turned, quickly, her heart skipping a beat. Ramesh was awake, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity she had never seen before. There was something different in his gaze, something almost distant. Baba? Anya asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ramesh's eyes flickered for a moment as if he was searching for something inside himself. Anya, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice low and strained. Anya felt a knot form in her stomach. She could tell something was off, but she wasn't sure what. What is it, Baba? Ramesh took a deep breath, his hand reaching out to grasp hers. His touch was cold, much colder than it should have been. Anya frowned but didn't pull away. She had seen him grow weaker before, but this coldness felt different. It felt almost unnatural. Anya, I don't know how to explain it, he continued, his voice trembling slightly. I don't feel like myself. I don't feel whole. Anya's heart tightened. What do you mean, Baba? Ramesh closed his eyes for a moment as if trying to gather his thoughts. It's like there's something missing inside me. I've been dead, Anya. I don't know how I came back, but I remember what it was like to be gone. It's not just a dream or a memory. It's real. I was there, and now I'm here, but it's not the same. I'm not the same. Anya's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this. She had assumed that once her father woke up, everything would return to normal. She had expected him to be the same man he was before. But now, she could hear the uncertainty in his voice, the fear in his words. Baba, what are you saying? You're here with us. You're alive. That's all that matters. Ramesh looked at her, his eyes filled with a sadness she couldn't quite understand. I know, Anya. I know you want to believe that. I want to believe it too. But it's like I'm not fully back. I'm stuck between two worlds. I don't know how to explain it, but something isn't right. Anya's mind raced. Was this some kind of side effect from the miracle that had brought him back? Had his soul not fully returned to his body? Or was there something else? Something darker, lurking beneath the surface? She didn't know what to think. All she knew was that her father was struggling in a way she had never seen before, and it scared her. Baba, please don't say that, Anya said, her voice breaking. You're here. You're alive. You just need time to heal. We'll help you. We'll get through this together. Ramesh smiled weakly, but there was no joy in his eyes. I hope you're right, Anya. I really do. But there's something I have to do, something I have to figure out. Anya squeezed his hand tightly. We'll figure it out together. I won't let you go again. But as the days passed, Anya began to notice more strange behavior from her father. He would often stare off into space, lost in thought, as if he was seeing something that no one else could see. Sometimes he would murmur to himself as if he were talking to someone who wasn't there, and on a few occasions Anya would catch him looking at her with an odd expression, one that seemed full of confusion and sorrow. Despite these moments, Ramesh continued to make progress. His physical health improved, and he was able to sit up and walk with assistance. But the emotional and mental toll of his return seemed to be taking a different kind of toll on him. Anya couldn't shake the feeling that her father wasn't entirely himself. He was there, but at the same time, he wasn't. It was as if a part of him was still lost, still somewhere else. One evening, as Anya sat by his bedside, Ramesh turned to her with a look of deep sadness in his eyes. "Anya, I don't know how to explain this, but I think there's something I have to do, something I have to find before I can truly be whole again." Anya didn't know what to say. She had seen him struggle with this inner conflict for days now, and she couldn't understand what he meant. "What do you need to find, Baba?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Ramesh looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "I don't know, but I feel it, deep inside me. It's like there's a part of me that's still missing, and I can't rest until I find it." Anya wanted to help him, to find the answers, but she didn't know where to start. All she could do was be there for him, to support him as he struggled with this mysterious feeling that seemed to be consuming him. As the days went on, Anya became more determined to find out what was happening to her father. She would spend hours researching anything she could find on life after death, on miracles, on spiritual awakenings. But no matter how much she read, nothing seemed to explain what Ramesh was going through. One evening, as she sat alone in the hospital room, Anya felt a strange, almost eerie feeling in the air. She glanced at her father, who was lying still in bed, his eyes closed. And for a brief moment she thought she saw something flicker in the shadows, something out of the corner of her eye. It was gone in an instant, but the feeling lingered. Was it a sign? Or just her imagination? Either way, Anya knew one thing for certain. The mystery of her father's return was far from over. And as much as she wanted to believe that everything would be fine, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the edge of something far bigger than they had yet understood. Something that could change everything. As the days continued to pass, the mystery of Ramesh's miraculous return became even more unsettling for Anya. There were moments when it felt like her father was slowly slipping away from her again, even though he was physically right there, beside her. His recovery had seemed to be progressing well at first, and yet there was something in his eyes that told her something was wrong. Something deeper than any physical ailment could explain. The once vibrant, strong man who had been full of life now appeared to be a shadow of himself. His physical body was healing, but emotionally and mentally, he seemed to be drifting. Anya couldn't shake the feeling that her father was struggling with something that she couldn't understand. Something beyond her ability to fix or help him with. His mind was clouded, lost in something she couldn't touch. It was as if a piece of him was missing, something intangible that kept him from being the man she had once known. It was one evening when Anya noticed a particularly strange change in her father. They were sitting together in his hospital room. He had been quiet for most of the day, looking out the window as if lost in thought. His eyes, which had once been full of warmth and love, now seemed distant, as if they were seeing something beyond the present moment. He had been muttering to himself again, words that Anya couldn't make sense of. At times, it almost seemed like he was speaking to someone who wasn't there, his voice soft and filled with an eerie tone. "Anya," Ramesh suddenly spoke, breaking the silence that had filled the room. His voice was faint, as if he was struggling to speak. "I don't know how much longer I can stay here." Anya turned to him, her heart racing. "What do you mean, Baba? You're getting better every day. You're stronger now. You just need more time, more rest." Ramesh turned his head slowly, his gaze meeting hers. "No, Anya. I'm not getting better. Not really. I'm stuck. I can feel it. My body is healing, but my soul, My soul is still lost. Anya's breath caught in her throat. She had heard him speak of feeling lost before, but this time it was different. This time, there was a finality in his words, an urgency. It made her fear that he was starting to accept the impossible truth, that no matter how much his body healed, he might never truly be himself again. "You're not lost, Baba," Anya whispered, her voice filled with desperation. You're alive. We'll figure this out. We'll find a way to make you whole again." Ramesh's eyes glistened with tears, but he didn't speak. Instead, he looked past her, as if something was drawing his attention elsewhere. Anya followed his gaze, but the room was empty. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the sterile walls of the hospital room. "I see them," Ramesh muttered, his voice trembling. "They're here. They want me to follow them. I don't know who they are, but I can't shake the feeling that I need to go with them." Anya's heart dropped into her stomach. What was he talking about? Who did he mean? She knew her father wasn't well, but this was something else. It was as if he was seeing something beyond the physical world, something dark, something not meant for the living. "Who, Baba? Who do you see?" Anya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. She wanted to understand, but the fear in her chest was growing. Ramesh's gaze flickered again, his eyes darting to the corner of the room as though he was watching someone or something. "I don't know. I don't know what they want. But I feel like they're calling me, Anya. They're waiting for me." Anya's mind raced. Was this some kind of hallucination? Was he simply imagining things, or was there something more? Could it be that the miracle of his return wasn't just a blessing, but a curse? That something darker had followed him back from whatever place he had been? She couldn't explain it, but she could feel it. The sense that something was terribly wrong. For the first time in days, Anya felt a chill run through her. She stood up from her chair and moved closer to her father's bedside, trying to ground herself, trying to calm the panic that was rising inside her. "Baba, listen to me," she said, her voice firm but filled with worry. "You're here with us now. You're back with me and Mama. You don't need to go anywhere. You're safe, you have us. You don't have to follow anyone. We love you." Ramesh's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, the distant, lost look faded. There was a flicker of recognition, a moment when he seemed to return to himself. "Anya," he whispered, his voice softer now. "I don't know what's happening to me. I don't understand it, but I feel like I don't belong here. Like I've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." Anya's heart ached. She had never seen her father so vulnerable, so broken. The man who had always been her protector, her source of strength, was now the one who needed her more than ever. "No, Baba," she said gently. "You belong with us. You belong here with me, with Mama. Please stay with us, we need you." Ramesh's expression softened, and for a brief moment, Anya thought he might be convinced. But then, something changed. His eyes grew distant again, his gaze returning to the corner of the room. He looked as though he was listening to something, hearing something she couldn't. "I have to go," he said, his voice barely audible. "They're waiting for me. I have no choice." Before Anya could stop him, he attempted to sit up, his frail body trembling as he pushed himself up. His movements were slow, unsteady, as if his body wasn't fully cooperating. But there was determination in his eyes, something desperate and unyielding. "Baba, no!" Anya cried, rushing to his side to hold him down. "Please don't do this, don't leave us, we need you." But Ramesh didn't seem to hear her. He was fixated on the corner of the room, his body stiff, as if he were trying to break free from something invisible. The fear in Anya's heart grew to an unbearable level. She had to do something. She couldn't let her father slip away from her again. Not like this, not when she had just gotten him back. "Baba," she shouted, her voice desperate. "Please listen to me, don't leave us." Tears welled up in her eyes as she grabbed his shoulders, trying to hold him in place to bring him back to reality. But it was as if something was pulling him away, something beyond her reach. Her father's body trembled, his eyes wide with a mix of confusion and fear. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the struggle stopped. Ramesh went still, his body relaxing. His gaze softened, and he looked at Anya with an expression she couldn't quite place. It was a mixture of peace and sorrow, as if he had finally accepted something he couldn't escape. "Anya," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "I'm sorry. I don't belong here anymore. I've seen things I can't explain. And they've called me back. I have to go now." Anya's heart shattered. She wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, but she couldn't. The look in his eyes told her that he had made up his mind. Whatever he had seen, whatever he had experienced during his time away from them, had changed him in a way that she couldn't reverse. There was no bringing him back fully, no undoing what had happened. "I love you, Baba," Anya whispered through her tears. "I love you so much. Please don't go." Ramesh reached out a trembling hand and touched her cheek, his touch soft and warm. "I love you too, Anya. You were always my greatest joy. But it's time for me to go." And with that, the light in his eyes faded, and his body relaxed completely, as if he had finally found the peace he had been seeking. Anya stayed by his side, holding his hand, refusing to let go. She didn't know what had happened, or what her father had experienced, but one thing was clear. He was at peace now. Her heart broke, but in that moment she understood. Her father hadn't truly left her. He had simply moved on to another place, a place she couldn't follow yet. The miracle of his return had given her a glimpse of what she had always wanted: time with him again. And though he was gone, his love, his spirit, would remain with her forever. And as she sat there holding her father's hand, Anya made a promise to herself. She would live her life to honor him, to carry his memory with her. She would never forget the miracle that had brought him back, and she would never forget the love that had bound them together no matter where he was.